There are two important ways of noticing how things can be handled. They are neither negative or positive, but they both incorporate the sense of knowing and to know how. When you're fleshing it out and when you are hashing it out. Now, both can deal with material within components of binary, whereas maybe there's no such thing as binary on the quantum if things are quanta. The quanta is, of course, things that are material made into such small amounts, or in large amounts that are just well defined, such as like the cookie cutter housing. In the movie Edward Scissorhands, you see that all the houses are cookie cutter. That means that they're all like identical and really close. And like, that might be deceiving, but that is actually a quanta. Even though it's larger than small particles or parcels, it is actually the same idealism of a quanta. So in binary component, a binary can be just as big if it's just in an orderly fashion. And an orderly fashion doesn't need to be linear and parallel. It can be spiral, such as the solar system in its orbits. They're orbital and a spiral component which is circular, and that can be thought of as a quanta. I understand deception cannot take out an entire race. It could end in an entire species. So I want to be more careful so I'm infinity clear that nothing happens to me. I was spooked earlier because I put some gasoline, accidentally dropped on my arm, and I could feel it entering my nervous system and putting it into pain. And I would hate for that to happen to anyone else. So I'm gonna ask questions, and if there's anything that isn't documented that should be, wow, don't I record myself every day? Why not try to open a fixture that hasn't yet been discovered? Because the middlemen are just always so used to marking up that it's hard to gain traction. What things are so elusive on air brakes is when you're trying to put them into larger vehicles, they're harder to control, and you end up just going forward and hitting your lip on the wheel in order for it to not be handled properly, or with the water leaking out into the computer on the air cooling system. And so what USA does have is marketing down to a T, but when it comes to other stuff, such as like sweatshops in China, we don't do that because it's not right. And that's really the name of the game, is if since it's not right, we're not doing it, but then we are like mad at other things that shouldn't be. And so when that's implicated on larger scales, there's just not enough makeup in order to excavate out of the innuendo. And so even with the things in the air brakes, we're gonna be excavating. If you don't want to fall into a hole, you have to excavate upright. And one of the best inclines you can take is to transform your inclinations to be more exciting so that you don't miss the platform if you're jumping from platform to platform, like in a video game, or like me when I jump off stuff. If I jump off a thing, I always make sure the platform of the landing isn't small so that I don't have to have a second maneuver of balance. And what would be worse if I was jumping on something that was not balanced, like a dock, because then once you land, you're gonna have to balance yourself left or right, and the looser that dock is, the more that you are gonna lean left or right when you land on it. Be jiggling and make you miss just a little bit, and have that be where a rock or a giant boulder becomes right underneath your car vessel. And so as you're turning, that boulder will rip your car in half just because it caught the corner. And so that would be a mechanical mistake. With a digital mistake, you don't want the radio you're listening to misfire and lose its signal, or the GPS system where you're trying to go somewhere and then it misses, or the place where you're going to make a transaction and that has overrides that need for managers that aren't there, or the place where you're going to do a transaction isn't even available in the location you're in, so you have to speed to go. All the chips come from Taiwan, and you're gonna have to wonder what good is the USA if all things are like failing at the same time in a lockdown, like a fail-safe. But then the question is, where does the calculation misfire? And this was interpreted, and the thing in between will just break down until it's either electrical or mechanical. Doesn't matter, it'll just keep breaking. So that's why you need all the firing on all cylinders, and then all the switches hitting at the right nodes to cover both the mechanical or electronical. And so when you're going into battle, like the hardest thing that you'll do all day or all year, you're gonna need electric and mechanical firing on all cylinders, meaning that if you're gonna burn rubber in your car, you don't want the axle to fall out or a tie rod to be loose and be jiggling and make you miss just a little bit, and have that be where a rock or a giant boulder becomes right underneath your car vessel. And so as you're turning, that boulder will rip your car in half just because it caught the corner. And so that would be a mechanical mistake. With a digital mistake, you don't want the radio you're listening to misfire and lose its signal, or the GPS system where you're trying to go somewhere and then it misses, or the place where you're going to make a transaction and that has overrides that need for managers that aren't there, or the place where you're going to do a transaction isn't even available in the location you're in, so you have to speed to go and get it. All the chips come from Taiwan, and you're gonna have to wonder what good is the USA if all things are like failing at the same time in a lockdown, like a fail-safe. But then the question is, where does the calculation misfire? And this was interpreted, and the thing in between will just break down until it's either electrical or mechanical. Doesn't matter, it'll just keep breaking. So that's why you need all the firing on all cylinders, and then all the switches hitting at the right nodes to cover both the mechanical or electronical. And it wouldn't be bad, it's just that there's not a single person who has all the answers. And when you're coming into niche category as microscopic bugs, and they're mandating everything from one size fits all for everyone, those are two issues that lets me know that they don't even know half the stuff that they should be, but they're acting as though they've covered all the grounds and that they're allowed to say anything for you to do once you don't listen. And you might think that all this hands tied and saying drinking Kool-Aid is so somewhat out there. I was just in an establishment. I don't want a copyright infringement for naming names or saying sayings, but literally it used to be where I didn't feel comfortable sitting down at a table because I didn't know the people. Well, now all the tables are empty, and it's saying that this table is not available because it's being taken out from being dissed. And when you're taking out from being dissed, it's like you didn't listen and now you're being shunned. And that's just scary because it comes down to drinking the Kool-Aid. And if they're the ones who are making it, they can actually have enough science to know to make you burn in either to want to have the Kool-Aid to quench your thirst. It's super scary to be in a virtue of a reality where the rules are set, and if you don't listen, you get the backhand of someone who has their hands tied. When someone doesn't like you, they're going to use you. And if you don't trust just about anyone in the whole wide world, the one person that doesn't like you will put you on a list, and then they won't allow you to do stuff. Well, what kind of stuff would that be? Anything you've bought into, such as literally a bank, a bank you buy into by using them, any place that would allow a bank is money through anything. So just, that's one example, that's all you need. And so if they're saying you can't do that and you can't do that because you don't trust me and you don't trust me, this is like the worst bully in the world. And who would that be? The one place where you have to be, mainly the area that you are living in. And so in order for this not to happen, it's like you're gonna have to follow and toe the line of a game that only they would like to play. Meaning, if you're not going to do what they say, then you're not going to be able to get pay. And the getting pay comes from like only if you're inside a mom and pop shop, but then if you're not, it's gonna be, they're gonna have the hands tied of the corporate. And this will be easier and easier the more and more that something is dangerous. And so if living is just dangerous and now you're in their virtue and it's their reality, and that's super scary. So it's no surprise that my arms are really colorful. I'm part Hispanic, and when that occurs, they'll get really dark before they turn red, just because it's in your DNA as like a safeguard, not to get burned, but just turn more dark. So when that happens, it gets really dry. And so when it's really dry and then it has a really thin liquid, like a high content, maximum capacity is gasoline, the higher grade is more dry. It's just like whiskey. The higher grade of whiskey is really dry. When that went onto my skin, it poured through like really quickly, and then I could actually feel the pain on it because I guess gasoline doesn't mix with your interior